Well, there's not a whole lot of time left, and we got a lot of ground to cover, so I've asked Brandon Gallups to join me here. Brandon, what do you think, man? Things are moving at a blistering pace here.
You know, Mike, they certainly seem to be. We see a lot of things going on the world stage in very prophetic areas of the world, and things that certainly look like they could be tied to some very prophetic scriptures, and I look forward to discussing that with you today, man.
Yeah, I want to focus today on the two beasts of Revelation 13, which we seem to see mirrored from Daniel chapter 7. So let's get right into this, because there are some people who you and I both respect highly who are saying that the beast has to be Islam, right? And you and I don't disagree with that necessarily, but there are two beasts mentioned in Revelation 13, right?
Very clearly two beasts mentioned.
Yeah, so let's get into the first one here. Daniel, he conflates a lot of issues here. He begins in Daniel 7, verse 3. 4 great beasts came up out of the sea, diverse from one another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. And I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked. And here we see, we clearly see here in one sentence, the formation of the United States of America, right?
It would certainly seem that way, wouldn't it, Mike? The eagle being formed off of the lion.
Right, the eagle was plucked off of the lion, the eagle's wings. The lion is an animal representation of Great Britain. That is the animal symbol for Great Britain. And then the eagle had eagle's wings, and the wings were plucked off of it, and it was lifted up from the earth, made to stand up upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. You know, the eagle is the national symbol for the United States. It says here the eagle's wings were plucked from the lion being the animal symbol for Great Britain. And a man's heart was given to it. You know, a secondary symbol for the United States is Uncle Sam, right?
Absolutely.
So then we move right along here. Another beast, second was like a bear. And we know the bear is the animal symbol for Russia. We're not going to go through all this this first beast and the animal symbols in great detail. But the bear is the animal symbol for Russia. And the next one is a leopard. And this is all going to make a lot of sense as we move on here. But the animal symbol for Germany is the leopard. If you trace the family name leopard back in time, you will trace it back to its origins in Germany. And of course, Germany has been making the Leopard tank since the 40s and is now making the Leopard tank once again. And so if we look at the eagle, rather the lion being Great Britain, the eagle's wings representing the United States, and that's important as we move forward here, folks, because we're going to leap from Daniel to Revelation 13 here. And the bear being Russia and the leopard being Germany, it will all make sense as we move forward here. And
hey, Mike, before we take that big jump, I think it's important to let people know that the reason we would compare these animal symbols to nations and to kingdoms, if you will, of the world, is because Daniel very clearly tells us later on in chapter 7, when he is given the interpretation of what he saw, that that's what these things are.
right.
And these were representations of 4 kings or kingdom yet to come.
Right, and it's also important to make the point that Daniel was being shown things that he himself did not understand. In fact, he was told, he said, listen, I don't understand any of this. Help me out here. And what did the angel say? He said, Daniel, this is not for you to understand. Just seal it up, and it's for those who are alive at the time of the end time. Those people will understand this. And here we are at the time when we believe could be the time of the end, or the end time, or the last of the last days, the end time being the last of the last days. We see these nations which correspond, which have taken on these animal symbols as their personal symbols. It really is amazing, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I just wanted to be very clear why we would make that explanation.
Right, and now we fast forward to Revelation 13. It says John is standing there. He's on the island of Patmos. He's being shown things that, I mean, clearly he himself he's doing the best he can to explain these things. It says, I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns. And upon the name of his blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was again like a leopard, feet like a bear, mouth like a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and seat and great authority. Did you hear that, folks? There is a a representation here that's missing from Daniel, and that is the eagle's wings. They're gone. They're not in here at all. And so this really does confirm, and we're going to get into this a little bit deeper here, but it confirms the fear that many people have that America is on its way out, right?
Yes, absolutely. You and I have discussed that at length in another program.
Yeah, and we see we look at headlines in the news. In fact, yesterday the major financial headline was that the U.S. GDP is once again in retraction.
Yes.
The GDP is the only indicator that people really need to be focused on. Forget about the stock market. Forget about the jobs numbers, because those are all fabricated and manipulated. The GDP is the number the GDP is the gross domestic product of a country, and the GDP is the monetary value of all goods and services produced in a country, and that includes government services. And back in 1948, the U.S. government, the percentage of GDP that was produced by the government was 11%. Today, the percentage of GDP that is produced by the government is 22%, or thereabouts. It fluctuates up and down, but it's between 21 and 22% right now. So it has doubled. The amount of money that the government spends and produces as a service has doubled since 1948. That is not a good thing, folks, because when the government spending goes up, but the overall GDP comes down, and by the way, GDP has been flatlining ever since Obama took office. I don't know how many people realize that or not, but he is literally destroying the country's financial standing in the world.
No, there's no doubt about it, Mike, that the financial standing, the military strength of the United States, listen, just look around at the civil unrest going on within the United States. All of these things appear to be very planned and calculated. And when you combine all of them together, it certainly looks like we're looking at a recipe for disaster for the United States as a country.
Right, and let's get into this. Dragon gave him his power business. We have this thing. It's like unto a leopard. Germany is the titular head of the European Union. And I find it interesting, Brandon, that the lion, Great Britain, has remained separate from the European Union. It's a part of Europe, but it's still it's not a part of the Eurozone. It's not a part of the financial system in Europe. They've kept themselves separate. They've kept the pound as their currency. They're not in the Eurozone. So here we have this prophecy which lays out a group of nations which are separate from each other, the leopard, bear, lion, the leopard being Germany, which is the head of the European Union. And it has the mouth of a lion. We did a whole show on that. The whole world speaks English. If you live in China and you want to work for the government, you have to learn English. All the kids learn English in school. The BBC, which is the British Broadcasting Corporation, they have as their motto that they are the world's radio station. The whole world speaks with the mouth of a lion. And so we look at this and we go, wow, this really is amazing. And then it says, the dragon gave him his power. And I'm looking at articles, Brandon. We're seeing a rise in the ability of China to give this leopard, bear, lion combo beast, if you will, real power. I'm looking at an article today from MarketWatch.com. This is from 2014. This was going to shock a lot of the people listening to this. I bet you a lot of people have not heard this stuff, but this article from MarketWatch says it's the talk of the financial ministries around the world. China's newly minted regional development lender, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the AIIB, Some economists see the AIIB as a rival to the institutions such as the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, which, although run through the auspices of the United Nations, are seen by critics as fully under the sway of the U.S. and other Western powers. And of course, there's also already an Asia Development Bank based in Manila and likewise run by the UN, though here too, some governments see it as largely led by Japan and the U.S. And then it says, many commentators say that the AIIB is less about anything wrong with the ADB, the Asian Development Bank, or the World Bank, and more about China's efforts to increase its voice in global development and financial governance, and even to reshape the financial world order itself. That is the language being used by Market Watch. Now that's back in 2014 when this thing was. They had the investment bank launch ceremony at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing on October 24th, 2014. Okay, that's less than a year ago, right? Now, can you guess what countries have already joined the AIIB?
Well, you and I know that Russia and Germany certainly have jumped on board.
Very much to the consternation of the United States, Russia the bear, Germany the leopard, and Great Britain the lion have all three now joined the AIIB. They couldn't wait, Brandon. They rushed to be empowered by the dragon. This is amazing news.
No, it is. And Mike, you can anybody can type in their search engine China, Russia, Germany alliance and just look at what pops up from very credible sources, from mainstream sources. I mean, I've done that. I'm looking right here in front of me. Huffington Post, Bloomberg, Max Kaiser, Washington Times, Mother Jones, Russia Insider, all documenting these alliances being formed and coming together right before our very eyes.
And now there is talk of war, Brandon, between China and the U.S. Very serious talk. There's documented evidence that the U.S. may use a ploy that I'm not sure how many people are aware of this, but back in the early 1900s, to help boost the Chinese economy, they sold bonds, and the U.S. bought hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese bonds. That the vast majority of this money is still owed to the United States. So Congress now is making moves. We're seeing the beginning of movement in Congress to address this money owed to the United States, because China is holding $1.2, $1.3 trillion in U.S. debt. But now there's movement within the Congress, and there are financial institutions, I happen to know, who are backing this movement to go after the money that China owes the United States. So this could be a financial incentive to go to war with China. There is geographic, real estate incentive to go to war with China over the South China Sea. And this could get very real very fast, Brandon.
No, it definitely could, Mike. And the same thing goes for the United States relationship with Russia. Look at the tension there through the Ukraine situation. And, we see both countries performing military drills in very strategic places and showing military shows of force in very strategic places around the world. And, it's just amazing to watch these events that, I mean, wow, you just sit back and look, and the imagery certainly seems to be there. It just looks like that we very well could be watching this beast system come together. Yeah.
I mean, as I listen to the news, Brandon, and I watch what's happening, it's like we're watching something that's scripted straight out of Revelation 13 here. Yeah. With these nations whose symbols, animal symbols, are mentioned in Revelation 13, lining up to be empowered by the dragon. It really is shocking. And this one here is rather controversial, but verse 3 says, "And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, but his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast." Germany, when when the Berlin Wall was erected and the city was split in half with the Russians, and Eastern Europe having been thrown from the fire pan into the fire, because the Russians, they liberated the Eastern European bloc from the Nazis, but then threw them into communism and poverty, and it was just a never-ending malaise for the people of Eastern Europe. And they put this wall up through Berlin, and then when Reagan and Thatcher forced Gorbachev to tear the wall down, finally, the headlines in the news read, "Germany's wound has been healed." And the whole world wondered at all the world. I mean, all of the world's cameras, news outlets, mainstream news, all of the world's news outlets had their cameras pointed at that wall. And I don't know if you remember this, but I will never forget watching the young men with the sledgehammers just pounding away at that wall, tearing it down with their bare hands. And the whole world, the headlines read, Brandon. In fact, you can look this up. You guys can Google this yourself. It says one of its heads was wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And when you look at the headlines from that era, it says in the headlines, Germany's wound has been healed. This really is amazing to me. I don't know what you think about that.
No, it certainly is, Mike. It definitely is, especially with the imagery we're given here that the beast looks like that it looks like a leopard, that it resembled a leopard. Actually, is the language used there in Revelation 13. So yeah, absolutely. Again, it would certainly appear that we very well could have seen this. That this could have been the healing of the wound.
And now, according to this gets a little scary. I mean, I spend a lot of time in the U.S. I know you do too. But this gets a little scary. I mean, because according to this, the way this seems to be laid out, the United States really is on its way out. And it could be a war. It could be the rapture. It could be any number of things. But it looks like the U.S., as far as its superpower status, is just about up. I don't know. What do you think of that?
No, I agree, Mike, and I've said that same thing publicly many times, especially over the last 6 or 8 months. It just, with everything that's going on inside of this country, with the decisions that are being made at the top. Listen, one of the biggest things that I always point to is our lack of support for Israel right now. I mean, we've turned our backs on Israel as a country. We have cursed Israel, if you will. And that it's very clear in God's word that that's not something that you can do as an individual or as a country or as an entity and survive for a long time. That's documented throughout world history. And
then in verse 5 it says, "There was given unto him a mouth." Well, actually, backing up to verse 4, they worship the dragon. They worship this. They worship perhaps the communist system, perhaps, which gave power to the beast. They worship the beast, saying, "Who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him?" You can imagine the Chinese, European, Eurasian cooperation system brings down the U.S. And I mean, the whole world would go, "Wait a minute! This cooperation, this co-op, if you will, has brought down the world's greatest superpower, the greatest superpower that ever was. Who's able to make war with that?" I mean, we have got to worship this beast, this thing, whatever it is. And worship can take many different shapes. But I mean, if this cooperation is able to bring down the U.S., people would definitely look at that and go, "Wait a minute, who's able to make war with that?" Right?
No, that's exactly right, Mike. If the U.S. is clearly toppled by a country or coalition of countries, then yes, it will be extremely hard to argue with that or to make a case for then toppling that coalition of countries. Like you said, the United States, the most biggest superpower in world history. Many people, I think, just still seem to think we're just going to float along in that capacity forever. Yeah. But no, once. No matter how it happens, if the United States does disappear from that superpower status, that we think it will if it happens from within, if it's toppled, or if it's financially forced out. It's going to leave a void in the world, in the power structure of the world. And it would seem that at the very least that this coalition of countries right now is positioning itself to fill that void.
Right, and it says that that they will speak great things and blasphemies, and they'll blaspheme God and His name and His tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. This could pertain to what may be coming against Israel, but it says, it very clearly says in verse 5 that it's a 3.5-year deal, 42 months, right?
Right.
So it says that He will make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given Him over all kindreds, tongues, and nations. People, this is why I try to ignore people who come to me and say, "Look, you've got it all wrong. All end time prophecy is regarding the Middle East. It's all Middle East centered. Nothing that happens in the book of Revelation happens outside of the Middle East." Well, here we go, right? And it was given unto Him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given Him over all kindreds, all tongues, and all nations. This is a global entity, a global problem, a global issue, right?
Very clearly.
And all that dwell on the earth shall worship Him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. So this sort of tells us that the church is going to be around for this, right?
It would certainly appear that it would be, Mike, and we can confirm that from other places in Scripture as well.
And then we'll close up this conversation about this China, England, Russia, Germany beast combination, which I really do think, as we watch the headlines, we watch these cooperations form, I really think that we're seeing what the Bible describes as the first beast of Revelation 13, wouldn't you?
Mike, I'm going to tell you, if it's not, then it's maybe one of the biggest coincidences of our lifetime. To see the symbolism, to see the striking detail of which it appears these events are happening. We certainly have to take a look at this as Christians and as students of the Word, and at least examine the possibility, the strong possibility that this is what we're watching happen.
And what we have just told the audience, Brandon, is very factual. There is of course, some speculation here. We are not saying this is that about everything that we're saying about this. We're simply pointing out the obvious, what you say would be the greatest coincidence ever, or Bible prophecy being fulfilled. But there are many factual statements that we've just given you that people really need to take into serious consideration. Then we get into verse 10 here, and we're going to get into this after the break, but it says, "He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is patience and faith of the saints." There we have the saints once again. You know that you're a saint, Brandon?
Mike, you know what, brother? That is a scary thought.
Right.
I certainly am not a saint, me in and of myself, but I guess under the saving power of Jesus, that according to the Word, that we are saints. And so just another thing to be thankful for. But I, in and of myself, certainly am not a saint, brother.
Right. And in verse 10 there, we see mention of the sword. And then in verse 11, we see another beast coming up out of the earth. After the break, we're going to get into that, Brandon. What do you think?
I look forward to it, brother.
All right, let's go ahead and take this break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Brandon, some amazing stuff in the first segment there. Let's move on to verse 11, because another beast is coming up. You know, this is where we get into some highly respected people that you and I respect very much, Joel Richardson, Walid Shoebat, and all these guys. They're saying that the Antichrist has to come from Turkey, has to be of Middle East descent. And you know what? You and I don't necessarily disagree with that, do we?
No, Mike, we don't. There certainly seems to be a lot of evidence, biblical evidence to point to that.
Right, and they're saying that the beast is Islam, right? And it has to be Islam. And we're simply pointing out that, yes, a beast is Islam. Islam is a beast. There are two beasts mentioned in Revelation 13 here, as well as Daniel 7. Now here comes this second beast, Brandon. And in verse 11 it says, I beheld another beast up out of the earth, had two horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. And there I think we have a different application of the word dragon. Because
I agree completely, Mike, yes.
Right, because in the first context it says that it was the dragon. And in the second context it spoke as a dragon, right?
That's exactly right.
And so there we could have a satanic connotation, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting the choice of the two different animal symbols there, the lamb and the dragon, because everywhere throughout Scripture you think of what a lamb represents. Something peaceful, something innocent. What does, if Islam does represent this beast out of the earth system, well, what are we constantly told by the media? What does Islam itself push on the world? Listen, we're just a peaceful religion. Nobody's going around killing anybody. The Islamic State isn't Islam. They represent themselves as a religion of peace, as a peaceful people. Yet, in fact, their actions are those of a dragon, of something that destructs, of something that brings harm, and something that is very powerful and does evil.
Right. And here we get into verse 12 here. And you had something very interesting. You had an incredible insight on this, and I want you to tell the audience this. It says, he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and all them that dwells in the earth to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So the first beast, as we outlined, if you didn't hear the first segment, go back and listen to it. The first beast is this combination of England, Russia, Germany. We talked about how Germany's wound was healed. We talked about how it's being empowered by the dragon, China. And it says in verse 12 that the second beast has all the same powers as the first beast, causes everyone in the earth to worship the first beast. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. And Mike, again, I think it's interesting the language that's used there. It says it exercises all of the authority of the first beast, so in other words, it can do all the same things, has all the same powers. But then the next part of that sentence says, on its behalf. In other words, on behalf of the first beast. Right. And here's what we know about Islam as it is in the world today, and especially the radical elements, the ISIS, the Al-Qaeda. This Islam as we know it today, and ISIS and Al-Qaeda in particular, these are radical, fundamental sects of Islam that were fueled, created, propped up, funded, and armed by the West, the United States in particular, to do its bidding, to do its disturbance in the Middle East. We know that. That is documented. That's an hour-long show for another day.
Right.
But listen, anybody with any sense can look up all of that stuff and say, wow, it's very obvious that this has happened over a period of years. Let me be very clear. I'm not saying that Barack Obama did all this. This has been in the works for many, many, many years and through many presidential figures that we have seen. Right. So if we're correct that the United States goes away, think of this, Mike. You then have this army, I'm using that term loosely, of people that have been trained, funded, propped up, and armed by the West, by the United States. The United States goes away. There's this void of power on the world scene. Who does this beast, this second beast system, now represent? Who do they now work for, if you will?
Right,
well,
the first beast.
They work for the first beast.
Right, the one with the power.
You know, that's exactly right. And again, Mike, I'm not saying that this is exactly that, but I'm telling you that I see all of the signs here for this to happen, for this to take on that shape.
And it looks like it could be happening in the news headlines every day. We could be the generation to see all of this unfolding, and it all fits like a glove into end-time prophecy. It says in verse 13, he does great wonders, and he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And who is the he? Well, the he, John was showing this beast, and you and I are making a powerful case that the second beast is Islam. And it says in verse 13, he does great wonders, so that he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. This seems to me like it is like John is seeing this, is showing this in a vision. This seems to me like Islam, ISIS, Muslim Brotherhood, whatever you want to call it. This end time beast is given military powers. That's what I'm seeing here. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
No, I think that could certainly be a fulfillment of this, Mike, but I think it's also important to point out that the Muslims are looking for a man, a figure in the form of a man to come to the earth. It's their Christ, if you will, the Mahdi.
Yeah.
They're looking for this figure, and they are fully expecting that when he shows up, that he'll have powers to call down fire from heaven, among other things. And they're looking for him to set up power in and around the Temple Mount area there in Jerusalem, and bring peace and this one world religion to the earth. They're looking for all of these things. They're looking diligently for all of these things. Joel Richardson documents that in his film, the recent film he has made. So I think it's interesting, as often with prophetic scripture, maybe we see a multiple fulfillments of this. Or maybe not, but I do think that it's worth examining that the Muslims that are looking for a figure just like what is described here.
Yeah, and the Islamic doctrine teaches is that the Mahdi is going to come and kill all the infidels and cleanse the world of the Jews and the Christians and all of that, and we could see a lot of droning happening, and when you look at video footage of drones shooting up the landscape, it does look like fire coming down from heaven. It really does. And you see these bombs coming down and so on. And Islam is a war religion. Or who said that? The leader of ISIS this week said Islam is not a religion of peace; it's a religion of war. And it could be here, Brandon, that they may say, yes, this is Allah doing this for us, but at the end of the day, they've been empowered by the first beast, and it could simply be, they've got the power to bring fire from heaven, and don't forget who's writing this, the Apostle John, who never saw a drone, he never saw bombs coming down from the sky. It would have looked like fire from heaven in his mind, right?
No, that's exactly right, and that's an excellent point to make, Mike. And I think it's also important to point out that, from this point forward in Revelation 13, it's almost speculation on our part, because I think that you and I would agree, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, that this is kind of where we are. We're watching, if this is that, if it is, then we're just kind of watching this unfold right now. We're watching the culmination of all this come together. And so, we will know, in my opinion, very soon if this is that, because we're going to see some of these other clues and some of this other imagery unfold, and I just believe that it will be in just as striking of detail as everything else that we're seeing around us.
Right. And of course, wrapping it up here, he deceives them that dwells on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that, so there we have again, miracles they had to do in the sight of the beast. So here we have this almost a partnership, right, between the two beasts. and that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound that did. So here we have Islam saying, okay, we got to make this image. We got to make this whatever it looks like. It could be, and it could be something as simple as a hologram. Erdogan, the president of Turkey, is known for making his appearances through holograms, right? You've seen that?
Yeah. Yes, I have. It's very interesting that the technologies, everything that's needed for this to happen in an imagery setting is available right now.
Right. Right, and then it says that they should make an image to the beast and has power to give life to the image of the beast, that the image should speak and cause that as many as will not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So here we have Erdogan, the president of Turkey, who some people are saying is the Antichrist. He's at least an Antichrist, just like Obama is an Antichrist, someone who is against Christ. The word anti means against, and Obama is clearly against Christ. Erdogan against Christ. And these are both Antichrist figures. Here we have Erdogan using image technology to speak anywhere he wants to without leaving his chamber, wherever he is, happens to be at the time. He can just appear anywhere, right? And then we get into the marking system here, Brandon. People will be forced to take on a mark, and they won't be able to buy or sell without this mark. Doesn't Islam have a marking system already in place?
Well, I think that they do, and there are also other marking systems, if you will, that we are watching take shape right now in the forms of technology through RFID chips, through retina scans, all of these things. Listen, it's the first time these technologies that we're seeing are the first technologies available in the history of mankind that could be used to mark people on a world scale.
Right.
So again, we're not saying that this is that, but we have to look at these things and say, okay, how are they being used? Who is using them? Who is promoting them? What are they promoting them for? We have to do this because, again, these technologies are the first in the history of the world that have the ability to mark the people on a world scale.
And that sort of activity, Christians to the man, even Christians in name only, will say, you are not marking me. I am not taking that mark. I've had very Christian light people, small C Christians, they have it just for fire insurance, just in case there is a hell.
Get out of hell free card. Yeah.
Right, but you mentioned the mark of the beast to these people. Oh no, they're not putting no mark in me. But what religion is very friendly to marking and the marking system is Islam. They already have a taxation system. It's called the jizya tax. And they have a marking system in place. They would very much welcome a marking system, or at least the use of a marking system, right?
No, they would, Mike. And again, not beating up or judging anyone that calls themselves a Christian, but you just have to wonder how many people are going to take the mark before they even know what's happening. Because they're not looking, because they're not examining these things, because they've got their head stuck in the sand and just thinking life's going to go on forever like it is, and it's not. The Word is very clear about that. There's going to come a time where we are forced to make these decisions, and Jesus said in Matthew 24 that those that stand to the end, that we will be, those are the saints, those are the ones that will be rewarded, those that make it all the way through that time and make it to the end.
And that's what makes, would you not agree, that's what makes the pre-trib doctrine so dangerous? Because they're saying, look, Brandon, if they come along and tell me that I have to take this mark or else my family will starve, I'm taking it, because it can't be the mark of the beast system, because clearly we're not out of here yet. And, Brandon, after all, why would God beat up his bride before taking her up into his bedchamber? I'm sure you've heard that argument before, but that's what makes the pre-trib doctrine so scary, dangerous, is, what if they're wrong? And people are here during the time of great tribulation. What if they're here during this, when this marking system is in place? Are the pre-trib people going to line up to take this mark because they have been fooled into believing that they will not go through tribulation. This is a dangerous teaching, I think. What do you think?
I agree, Mike. I have made the same case and even gone on so far as to say, not only everything that you just said, but the other danger of it is, could this not be part of the great falling away, in that you've got, millions and millions of people that have been taught this and said, don't worry about it, nothing too bad's going to happen, you're going to be teleported out of here Star Trek style,
right,
before anything bad happens. Well, when that doesn't happen, then there are going to be people who will call into the little C Christians, I believe, as you just described them, that are going to call into question everything else they've been taught, everything else they've ever heard from their pulpit, and everything else that they've ever heard someone else read from the Bible, because they haven't taken the time to do their own study and research and beg for the insights and wisdom of the Holy Spirit from doing their own study and research.
Right. And the whole chapter ends with verse 18. Here is wisdom, let him that understands count the number of the beast, the number of a man. His number is 666. Brandon, I don't think we have time to get into all that. There's lots of speculation out there about what that means. The number 666 can be attributed to Barack Obama on many levels. The PNN YouTube channel, there are several videos which outline this. But the number 666 can be attributed to various elements within Islam, perhaps even Erdogan himself. But it simply says it's the number of a man. And let's just keep our eye on that. Let's just pray that the Lord gives us a more clear understanding on that, so that we will not be in darkness about this 666 number. I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, I agree, Mike, and the biggest thing that I say about the 666 is this. What I'm pretty sure it's not is I'm pretty sure that we shouldn't be waiting and saying, well, nothing can be the mark of the beast because no one's asking us to stamp 666 on our forehead.
Right.
I wouldn't be sitting around waiting for that and
then
saying, oh, well, here's the mark of the beast. I just don't think it's going to happen that way, brother.
Right, and it doesn't say that anyway. It's
it doesn't, but that certainly seems to prevail as the teaching of the day.
Right, and so, gosh, I don't know. We're going to end it here, I think, Brandon. I think we've given a lot of people a lot of material to digest, to think about, to pray about, and to consider that perhaps we should not be waiting for the end time to come, because the end time is now. What do you think?
Mike, I agree, and I would just end by saying that if we are going to call ourselves Christians, if we are going to align ourselves with Christ, then guess what? That's what we're supposed to be doing. We are supposed to be looking for these things. We are supposed to, when we feel like that the Spirit is revealing things to us through the study of the Word of God, then we are then supposed to do what you and I are doing right now, and that is to warn people. And that can come in different formats. You and I are blessed to have this platform to stand on and try and give those warnings as we feel led to do. But everyone has a job to play in this. If you are calling yourself a Christian and if you are aligning yourself with Christ, then please be aware of what's going on in the world around you. Please read the daily news in one hand and your Bible in the other, and be looking for the signs of the times. Understand the times in which we live. And those are words out of the mouth of Jesus himself.
And get plugged in to PNN, the P.P. Simmons News and Ministry Network. You've been listening to the Prophecy Report with Mike Shoesmith and Brandon Gallups, and we will talk to you next time.